there fellow guitarists, welcome to today's tutorial. In this lesson we're going to be covering Etude or Allegro by Mauro Giuliani. And just before we get into it, if you think this study is a little bit too much for you, it's a little bit too technical, I suggest that you head to the playlist that I have, and it's got Mauro Giuliani's 120 exercises for the right hand. That set of exercises, all 120 of them, are absolutely outstanding to help you develop the right hand. They're not particularly musical, so it's not really going to sound like you're playing a song or a piece, but that's not the point of those. The point of those is to really develop your right hand, and if you can get through all 120 of them, you're going to have an outstanding right hand with an extremely solid foundation. Otherwise though, you can try this one. It basically incorporates a lot of the techniques that you will find amongst those 120 studies for the right hand. Let's have a look at this. It is an etude, which, as I've explained in some of my other videos, means study. And these studies were written for the sole purpose of developing some part of your technique. This particular etude is really focused around the right hand, and I think the main purpose of this was to keep your right hand steady and make your thumb do quite a lot of work. I mean, all of the fingers are doing a lot of work. It's Allegro, so it's pretty quick, and these are semiquavers, so you should be building up towards about 120 beats per minute. And of course, the faster you can go, I'm not going to say the better, but it's really going to mean that your technique is solid and you can play these types of things at a high speed. 120, if you're getting up to that speed, you're doing extremely well. As far as what are you supposed to be focusing on when you do this, I believe that it's, one, keeping the hand steady, relaxing your fingers, and making your thumb move pretty quickly across the strings while your fingers are doing arpeggios amongst all of that. If I just get into it before I actually start explaining all the notes and stuff that we're playing, it starts off with a pattern that you'll find in some of Giuliani's other etudes, but then it has a lot of thumb work. That thumb index, and you'll find that thumb index alternating happens in so many classical guitar pieces. This kind of, especially when you're doing octaves and stuff like that, you tend to find that you're alternating between thumb and index. That kind of thing. It's an extremely good and common technique that you've got to master at some point in time. The other one is just keep your hand steady, so try to avoid bouncing it around too much. Just keep it really still, and if you need to, have a look in the mirror when you're playing. Sometimes you'll think, oh yeah, I'm keeping it pretty still, but it's actually bouncing around and you don't really notice it, but when you look in a mirror you can actually really see how your technique is going. The other thing is to keep your fingers close to the strings. I mean, that's a given really, keeping your fingers close to the strings. Sometimes I feel that I shouldn't even have to mention it, but I do, because a lot of guitarists, sometimes their fingers are flailing around and they wonder why they keep missing the strings, and often it's because your fingers have gone too far away from where they're meant to be. And the further they travel from the strings, the longer it takes to get back, and it's an increased chance that you're going to miss the note that you need to hit even when you do get back there. You only need to move your fingers just enough to make the sound. That's it, you know, you don't need to take these big, giant leaps like that. There's a huge amount of force that can be generated just from this part of your finger. There, that's where all the power actually comes from. Don't forget, if you enjoy the video, make sure you destroy that like button and also subscribe to the channel. That way it'll keep you up to date with everything that's going on. This year there's a lot of good content on here, especially if you're an aspiring guitar player. And if you're a guitar player that struggles to read tab or cannot read music notation, or either or both, you don't need to if you come to this channel, because I teach you everything note by note. You don't even need to read either of those two languages in order to be able to play any of these pieces. It's enough talk from me, let's do this. It's a very simple finger picking pattern. Let's just have a look at that pattern. Thumb, index, middle, index, annular, index, middle, index. And these three fingers, IMA, index, middle, annular, they don't change strings. They're always on the same strings throughout this etude. So you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to think, oh man, you know, I've got to move my fingers from string to string. No, only your thumb is moving from string to string. Okay, let's try that one more time. P, I, M, I, A, I, M, I. And then we're going to have this. P, I, P, I, P, I, P, I. Let's chuck the chord in. The chord, second finger on the second fret of the G string, first finger, first fret, B string. Okay, so you just do that and start with your open A. Then you're going to have, that is, in the bass line, open, second fret, third fret, open, all on the B string. And in between each of those notes, you pick that A on the second fret of the G string. That's a pedal. From the beginning. Then keep this finger on. Here's a little technique for the left hand. Don't lift this finger off because you're going to a D minor chord and it has that note in it. This A is common to an A minor and to a D minor chord. So there, what I'm doing is I leave that on and my fourth finger goes onto the third fret of the B string. My first finger goes onto the first fret of the first string. I'm going to do the exact same pattern, but this time my thumb is going to be starting on an open D, like this. Same pattern, everything. And we're going to do the same bass pattern, but this time it's moved to the D string. So we've got open, 2, 3, open, just like you had on the A string, but this time it's moved up. It's actually moved up a fourth. So it starts like this. Then moving to an E chord. It's just like the A minor chord actually, but you move that shape upwards to the G and D string. So first fret G string, second fret D string. Same pattern that you just did, same strings that you just did. And then we're going to have 2, 3, 2, open on the D string, and in between we're going to pedal on the G sharp. There. So from the D minor, E. And let's go back to the beginning. Back to the A minor, but we're going to invert it by placing a note that isn't A in the bass. This time it's actually C, so that's an A minor first inversion. We're going to pick everything else as the same as the first chord, but the only difference is starting with the third fret on the A string. And this time we're not going to do that or anything like that. We're going to do the same pattern but with a E7 chord, second inversion, like this. That's second fret on the A string, first fret on the G string, third fret on the B string, same finger picking pattern. From this inverted A minor, from the beginning. Start that again. Here it changes. We're going to do a full A minor chord. We're not going to do it like this, we're going to do it like this. First finger on the first fret of the B string, and second fret on the G string, second fret on the D string. Same pattern with the bass on the D string. Keep this chord, but then you're going to move to an E in the bass, which is actually an A minor second inversion. So is that one, it's just an octave lower. Then we're moving to an E suspended fourth. There, all I've done is lifted my first finger off, same pattern. Then I'm going to go to the bass up there, but I'm going to remove the suspension and go to the first fret on the G string and pick the same. You could lift this finger off too at this point if you wanted to. From that second section. Then we're into the last part, which is completely different from anything that's come before. Right, the chords are pretty similar, but the arpeggio shape is not. We have the opening chord, A minor, and we're just going to go straight through that way, P-I-M-A. Then we're shifting to an E7 chord. That's first fret on the G string, third fret on the B string, and starting the arpeggio pattern with an E in the bass on the sixth string. So it starts like this. Then back to the A minor, and then just to a normal E chord. No seventh on the third fret, just the first fret on the G string. So that whole pattern is going to sound like this. Start again. Then the song finishes, or the piece finishes, with octave A's, second fret on the G string and the open A together. I think in the last couple of bars there where you have the new pattern, P-I-M-A, P-I-M-A, it's a great chance to try that apoyando with the thumb, which is the rest stroke. When you're doing the rest stroke, don't really think about going down that way, think about pushing into the guitar. If you're struggling with that, just try with the open strings. You can see when you move from E to A, you don't actually have to do a double movement, so don't do this. Because you've already got it resting there, so there's no need to lift it off again, only to play the same string. Rest, follow through, rest, follow through. It's just something quite cool to try. The apoyando with the thumb is something that some classical guitarists tend to neglect, because it is quite tricky sometimes. For some people it's natural, for me it never was. I really had to work at it, and I still work at it actually. Flamenco guitar players tend to have an extremely well-developed thumb. It's capable of doing all sorts of mind-boggling things that classical guitarists usually, but not always, usually don't seem to be able to do. Even lifting with the thumb, which is called alzapua, which means to lift, and that's when the thumb actually plays on an upstroke, almost like a finger. But that technique's for another day. That's the end of the lesson. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Remember to experiment with what I've taught you. Try to work on keeping your hand nice and steady, fingers steady also, planting, apoyando with the thumb, and also just experiment with moving around, seeking out different timbres. And also if you want to, you can practice slowing down, speeding up, this kind of thing. I'd also recommend practicing these with a metronome so you can gauge your progress as time passes. You should always be seeking to maybe click that metronome up 3 beats a week or something. You know, of course there's going to reach a point in time of diminishing returns where you put in a lot of practice. You don't quite get the return that you were making like maybe 6 months ago when you were leaping ahead, and you know, every week you were able to push that metronome 10 beats per minute, and then suddenly, oh, you know, you're not making much progress. That's normal. You can't keep sort of going up exponentially. Your speed will plateau eventually. Don't worry about that. The idea is just to keep pushing, and I would recommend trying to hit about 120, 130, even more if you can, beats per minute, and you'll be playing semi-quavers in this. Remember, if you want the free tabs, you can click on the link below in the description. If you want a paid version, that paid version has my suggested fingerings for the right hand and the left hand fingering, and you can just click on the link in the description for that as well. Thanks for following me here. You can also keep up with me on Twitter, Instagram, and my blog, Facebook as well. The links are all there on the channel page. As you know, let your fingers fly.